Our next video clip is going to deal with the global system options within the SIMSII. There are two completely different masks that are located under Charlie, Sam, Dog, and then Charlie is the first one, global system options. And we're going to bring up, and these are all switches that have global capabilities within the SIMSII. This is part of setting up the SIMSII for your central station and the way that you want things done. We're just going to start out at the top and go down through the explanation. Always remember the F1 key will always give you a written explanation of what this particular field means. Now, reoccurring no test reminder. No tests are NOT messages that are created whenever the auto test interval times out. If you have it set for 24 hours and you get a NOT message up, the question is, do you want it to come back every hour because that's the interval range, or would you like it to come back 24 hours later? Because sometimes operators tend to sign these things off, or we want to put it up on hold, but yet even if we complete it and we don't get another auto test, we want to know about it 24 hours later. If you answer this no, you'll receive it in the total interval, 24 hours, 7 days, whatever your selection might be. If you answer yes, it's going to come back the next hour, the next minute, the next day. If you have reoccurring LTOs and LTCs, there are a lot of situations where an LTC comes in, we'll make a call, we'll sign it off, and the LTC, if they don't close, how long would you wait? Would you want the system to wait before it notifies you again? If you put a temp schedule again, of course then it will follow that temp schedule. But if you don't put the temp schedule in, when do you want it to come back? The default is 30. Some people change this to 60 minutes, 90 minutes, but this is where you make that change. Auto test during opening hours. Again, there are and have been in the past certain circumstances to where the auto test you would not want it decrementing if it was during the hours accounts were open. This default is yes, because we want the auto test actually counting down at all times, whether it's day or night. And since about 1990, this has been pretty standard and done consistently, where the auto test timers are not reset by openings and things like that. However, there are, remember that your auto test timer can be reset depending on the way you want it or not with any signal, and there were times that auto test timers were not turned on if accounts had opening closing signals, so we were really dealing with opening closing and the fact that they had to open up over the weekends and things like that. Signals that reset the auto test timers. Signals that retest. By this flag you can identify that only a test or a PTS signal will reset the timers that are kept on the auto test. There are circumstances and have been where an open followed by an open was really a restore. These are mostly direct wire things to where you didn't have enough zones to really tell certain conditions. Change troubles to forced arm. Change a trouble on a forced arm to an isolation. This was a radionics thing. A trouble, if it were during the following a forced arm, meant that it was really an isolation, and this will make that modification for you. If you use this, there'll be a 3-second delay on the trouble signal coming in to see if the forced arm follows it. In our routine action masks, we have the ability to put pass cards in there, or the requirement. You may choose to disable that requirement, so in order to complete that, no pass cards required. You may exclude operator pass cards 000 from being used on routine action masks. This means that the operator can't sign off an event without putting the pass card of the premise in there. Disable the F10 log in and log out. We have found some central stations have requested this, and that operators are working the traffic display. There's an F10 key, of course, to complete the selection of some of the events. If they're in the traffic display, it automatically kicked in the log in, log out screen. So this disables the log in, log out from the traffic display. Enable account audit trail. The default for this is on. This is a very important feature that identifies the audit trail capability. That is, if you change the name of an account to something else, we're going to write a history record out in the history that shows that that change had been made. And knowing that change had been made, it'll show what the field name was, what it was before, and what it was changed to now, along with the operator's initials. The default is on, and this is a very, very useful feature. This will turn your central station into daylight savings time monitoring. This doesn't turn on daylight savings. This just says turn on daylight savings for my central station when applicable. The hours offset from GMT. This is important when creating emails because all emails are based on GMT time. If you hit the F1 key, you'll find all the popular settings, so you can pick yours and just make the change for your central station. Write description into history. There came a time to where we started to transmit, or our panel started to transmit in descriptions into the interfaces. If we want to write those descriptions out, we can force them to be written out as opposed to writing it, the history record, in a binary format which doesn't contain the zone descriptions. This is also helpful if you write out the descriptions into history for opening, closing, when we have users that later on leave and have shared a user number with someone else or share it with the new person that goes in. So we can see in our history when one person used that user number and then it was changed to another. Using this particular option will probably at least double the size of your history files. But in today's drive sizes and so forth, it's completely insignificant, so it really doesn't matter. This is the resolution capability switch for faxing. You can use fine resolution or not. Obviously, the fine resolution takes longer to transmit, but it does give a much more readable fax at the other end. During our data entry videos, we talked about double knock in great length. This is the enable system-wide for double knock, and also we can identify here how many minutes we want the double knock to be in effect. Double knock again, let's say zone 6 comes in from the account. It's going to be auto-logged. We're going to start a timer for 10 minutes in the case of what I put up here. And if another double knock zone comes in from that account within that 10 minutes, it'll be brought to the operator's attention. If it doesn't, the timeout goes away. If another double knock zone comes in, it restarts the timer. We must have 2 double knock zones within that pre-described period of time in order to bring it up to operator attention. Enable signal suppression. If we have, and this was something UL required, if we have a signal that comes in, a code 6 that comes in every minute or every 5 minutes, and it comes to the screen, there becomes a time to where this repetitive signal coming in serves no purpose. In a case of runaway PIRs, runaway passives, and so forth like that, we can turn on signal suppression. And if I get signal, if I get a zone 6 in, let's say, and I'm going to, 3 minutes later, I'm going to get another zone 6 in. When I receive the third zone signal in that matches, I'm going to auto-log it, and I'm going to create a signal called runaway for that account. That identifies to the operator that it would appear we have a runaway signal. Any subsequent signals that come in with that retimeout period of 10 minutes will be auto-logged. Now, this does not have an effect on priority 1 signals. This is only for priority 2 and below. So if you have a fire alarm and it keeps coming in, signal suppression will have absolutely no bearing on it, and it will continue to come to the operator's attention. We feel that priority 1s are something we should never interrupt or automate too much. Okay, recurring unrestored reminders. Okay, unrestored signals can come up once, or we can suggest that they keep coming back. When I say unrestored, zone 6 comes in. We have it set up so that if it doesn't restore within 3 minutes, we're going to get an unrestored signal. That comes to the operator's attention. The question is, do we want to get it every 3 minutes from now till the end of time? Because it could be a service situation. So we can select yes or no whether we really want to keep getting that unrestored over and over again. Any cancel cancels all alarms. That's a fairly important feature. A lot of times we want to say if a cancel comes in, let's let the operator know it canceled all alarms. Sometimes there are generic cancels that come in from panels and they're not zone dependent. We know that the radionics provides zone dependent cancels, but lots of panels don't. They send in a general cancel and we can now select it to cancel all alarms. We spoke about the unrestoreds. There are panels that when an account is open, it's an open reset, resets all the zones, and you never get the restoral in. I happen to believe that an opening should clear all unrestoreds. There are some people that don't believe that. That's okay. Any cancel clears unrestoreds. Again, it's the same thing. Sometimes cancels clear the zones, but don't send in restorals. And this again, any cancel clears all unrestoreds. Any trouble removes the prem verify. We can, if we have a trouble signal, the chance of calling the premise for a global prem verify for that account, it's going to have no effect. They're not going to be able to clear troubles. And this just says remove the premise verification for troubles so that we can get to the dealer's contacts and make whatever calls we need to make. We can set so that if we have an event on hold, any restoral that comes in is automatically going to be made an exception as opposed to auto-logging. That is, a lot of times we put events on hold while we're waiting on the restore. So in this case, even because it's on hold, the restore comes in, it's an exception instead of being normally auto-logged as it might be. Leave operators initials when an event is placed on hold. We have dealt with an alarm, we place it on hold. We can choose to put the operator's initials beside that event that's been placed on hold so that no one else can pull it down and only that operator. That is good as long as you make the operators make sure that they take care of them before they leave off their shift. We talked during the operators video about temp schedules. Here is where we can select whether we want to add the tolerance for temp schedules or not. In other words, I put a temp schedule in. This man says he's going to be gone from there by 2 in the morning. But I have a 60-minute tolerance on my normal schedule. The question is, do I want to add the tolerance to the temp time he's given me, or do I want to make it the exact time he gave me? This is a belief. It's just a central station procedure. I myself believe if he says he's going to be gone by 2, he should be gone by 2, but you can choose to add or not add the tolerance for your temps. This can be used. There is a RBB report within the SIMSII. When we export that RBB, we can choose to have the addresses in it or not. It's just a modification of the way a report is presented. This is a very helpful thing. It normally is set to no. There are circumstances and people that want to print out empty reports or to transmit empty reports. For the most part, it's a confusing factor and creates a lot of unnecessary paper printouts or faxing and emails. But this is up to the central station. But this flag will say, if you say print empty reports and you ask for reports to be transmitted, all your opening closing reports, and if someone happened to be closed, it'll transmit an empty report. You can choose whether to have military time on reports. Obviously 6 p.m. is the same as 800 hours in military time, so this just depends on the way you want it to appear on your reports. Do you want account numbers to appear on your reports when you send them out, transmit them out? or mail them out. There are circumstances where customers have decided that they want to use the account numbers for the pass cards, so therefore they didn't want to transmit the account number for fear it would be used by someone intercepting the mail. For the most part, it's defaulted to on, and probably that's the way it should be. In a peer-to-peer network, you can transmit the current time from the primary to the other workstations from within the traffic display. Since about 98% of all of our central station systems are on Novels, this really has no bearing. If you were in a peer-to-peer network, you may choose to sync it through the traffic. It is important that all of your workstations are synced up in the time. Truly, there are other ways to go about this. There are products that are provided on NT systems that allow your workstations to sync up the time from the from the Windows NT server. We recommend this. If a signal comes in on the primary at 1300 hours, it simply doesn't look very good if it's picked up at 1310 because the clock was off on the workstation the operator was using. Or it doesn't look very good if it was picked up 3 minutes before it came in. So syncing the time of all your workstations is a very important factor, whether you do it through the traffic or you do it through the Novell. The Novell time sync is going to be handled at a different place. We will see that. For the most part, the time sync through traffic switch should be off. We can enable dealer traffic file. This is most important on the primary. It simply means that for each signal that comes in, it's displayed on the generic or the all-encompassing traffic display the operators use, but you can also write that signal into individual dealer traffic files. If you have remote dealers dialing in, if you have SIMSII, for the most part this should be left on because it allows the SIMSII users to see the last 150 signals that were transmitted in for their particular group. You can choose to display completed events on your traffic display or not. If you have a high volume central station, turning this display completed events off will certainly remove some of the traffic across your network, allow it to run smoother. If you're less than, let's say 25,000 accounts, probably I wouldn't even worry about it, and I would leave it on because it is helpful to see the closings as you go on down through. The utilized record locking is a manual switch that can be turned on or off, but will be overridden no matter what you put based on the fact of whether you've got a network connected or not. So the program is smart enough to sense the fact that you've got a network, and if it does so, it will change that to yes automatically. This concludes page 1 of the globals, and now we can move immediately to page 2. Page 2 is just simply a continuation on of what we've already done. These again are global switches. They affect all accounts and all operations. Here, first of all, in the first 4 entries are where we set the number of zones average per account. We know that we can have 200 zones for one account, and we can have 1 zone for another account, but there is an overall average number, and here's where we set that average number. That lets us build out our files to a certain size, knowing that they're used in a random fashion and that any one account can get how many ever it wants, but the overall picture is for 50 accounts, 40 zones per account, I have 2,000 slots available to put zones in the case of the demo right here. Contacts, I've got an average of 3 per account. 50 accounts, I have 150 contact slots, and so forth like that. These are the averages. I think I spoke earlier on another video clip regarding the program status and the percentages there. And here's where you can modify those program status changes to get it in a more productive fashion based on the account slot allocation. Okay, caller ID mismatches to the traffic display. The SIMS2 will process caller ID on various receivers. And that means we get a signal for every signal that comes into the system. For a test signal, you're going to get the test, and you're going to get a caller ID signal. There are those that would like to see each one of these caller IDs, even if they match, written into history and put on the traffic. Note that the mismatches will always be put to the traffic and will always be written into history, but this is so that you will write the caller ID matches to your history. This will obviously double the size of your history files because you're writing two signals for every one signal. There are late to open, late to close, and NOT is an account zone. This is a very useful figure, or useful capability. If you want your LTC treated in a special way, you may nominate or your NTO or your NOTs, your LTOs, to be treated as a zone. In other words, instead of the system creating an LTO message, which is a mnemonic, it will take that LTO and place it in the zone so that you can actually create a zone in the account to do whatever you want. Create a special call list, create certain criteria of unrestoreds. Who knows what might come through your mind, but it has to be based on moving this into the account zone. For all those accounts that don't have anything in the account zone, their LTOs, LTCs, and NOTs will appear as normal, and you'll note no change. So if you answer yes to this and you only put one LTC in one zone of one account, that zone of that account is the only time you'll notice any difference. We have the ability for non-supervised faxing. This is for special drivers to where we're not going to monitor whether they go through or not go through. We're just going to ship it out, and that's the end of it. Modify Alt F4 for the local times. When we're in a dispatch mask, we do an Alt F4. We see the last 8 events. They're in Central Station time unless we answer yes to this, and then they will appear in local time. This again is a capability or dependent on what the Central Station wants. Caller ID blocking. When we make a auto dial call out from a dispatch mask, we may choose to send through the code that blocks the caller ID. And that's so that if we run down through a call list and we call 10 people and finally the 11th one answers, we don't want to be leaving caller ID messages on the first 10 so that they'll call back the Central Station and say, I don't know why I'm calling, but your number was on my caller ID. This just creates a lot of excess time for the Central Station personnel to answer questions, or everybody kind of looks at each other wondering why they're calling each other. Next one, auto log after forced armed event. This gives the ability to auto log those isolations after a forced arm event. There's no reason. This person has armed a system. He's going out the door. He knows what he did. So there will be no purpose in trying to get a hold of him, as opposed to an isolation when somebody is isolating a zone on a panel. That might be an exception event where you might want to call them because they're available. This is require 10-digit dialing. This means that if I get to an account or I try to do any auto dialing of less than 10 digits, I'm going to bring up an error screen. And I'll tell data entry when they try to put it in. There are localities now that require 10-digit dialing for everything. This is a data entry kind of thing, which will bring up a screen, tell them they're not allowed to put in only 7 digits. Dealer contacts on the dialing pick list. This is a switch to where we can turn on that will allow the dealer contacts to be placed in the dialing window pick list when we hit the F2. It just gives the ability to see the dealer contacts as well as the account contacts. Remove leading form feeds. When we're printing to printer or printing on networks, we send out a form feed before we do anything else. That makes sure The form is at the top of the printer and ready to go in case somebody tore it off previously and so forth. Subsequent form feeds by many printer drivers are removed, but some they are not. In this case, we're going to remove that initial form feed from the SIMS reports and substitute a carriage return in there. The next several of these relate to the SIMS for Windows options. Service orders with zone info, service orders with equipment info, and service orders with the last date events, and service with the service history. These are SIMS for Windows kinds of things, and they don't really pertain to the SIMS for DOS program. Service work orders with contacts, with the page 6 info, and with dispatching info. These again are pretty well reserved to the Windows version, and we'll just move down below those. We can set up a passcode that will be used for duress when we're working a mask. This is a global system-wide. If I'm in a dispatch mask and I ask the person for their passcode number, if they tell me whatever I put in here, I could be red rose. If they tell me their passcode is red rose, I'm going to automatically create a duress signal so that the operator will immediately see this person is under duress. We can choose or modify the passcode as well as what mnemonic it creates. Okay, we can redirect dispatch info to disk. This is for utilization of other third-party programs that pick up this dispatching information off the disk and might go into some sort of a CAD system or be picked up by the police department dispatch system. We can identify whether we want to generate a service call by signal. This can be very helpful in that I can set up certain masks or certain mnemonics that when they come in, they're going to automatically generate a service call and just autolog themselves off of the traffic display. In this case, let's say a panel is going to send in a memory failure message. It's not really important that the operator handle this. It is important that a service call is generated, and this is the perfect situation where we might use that kind of capability. We can create a delayed hold event and a hold event. So when I go to put something on hold, I can get up another little list box that will identify if I want to place it on hold for a period of time or just place it on hold immediately. When I place it on hold for a period of time, it will disappear from the traffic display and come back as a DHE event after that timeout. This switch here allows the base account to place all sub-accounts on hold, or excuse me, on out of service also. So if I had a base account that was redirecting signals to 7 or 8 sub-accounts, and I placed the base account on test, this could be a case of a factory or something like this. When I place that base account on test, it's also going to place all the sub-accounts out of service also. This switch will allow us to modify the mnemonic on unrestores. Instead of using the URS signal, it's going to modify that mnemonic, which it might be a BUR, to, I believe it happens to be a B-R. We'd have to consult with our our event messages to know exactly which one it is, but I believe it's a B-R. Okay, we spoke about, in the receivers section, we spoke about line timeouts. We have communication failures. We have line failures and so forth like that. This switch will allow those things to be brought back after that same period again and again and again. So that if we had a line failure or a line timeout, that every 30 minutes it will bring it back over and over and over again. So if it's automatically signed off by accident, we're going to get it back again. This is much in the same context as late to closes and recurring no tests and so forth like that. There is a switch here to enable the transaction file output that is used in the SIMS database engine. This switch is to begin false alarm checks, starts exceptions. In other words, when I install a new account, if I put a begin false alarm check date in there of the 1st of the month, and it is currently the 20th of the month, whatever comes in from that account is going to be auto-logged until the begin FA check. So a lot of times when you do installations, you'll say, okay, we're not going to do anything with your signals for 7 days, so you get a chance to work with your account, get used to your account, and that way we'll stop dispatching police or fire departments until this certain date. This switch allows you to use that begin false alarm check date to begin those exceptions. Original time for delayed events. This is a very helpful thing. We spoke about getting a burglary code 6 in and getting an unrestored, let's say 30 minutes later. The question is, do we want the unrestored event or the delayed event to have the time of the original signal or the time of the timeout after 60 minutes or whatever? And this is where we make that decision. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. We've covered all of the current global system options, and I certainly thank you for your attention.